let's go back to political call to order. How about invocation, pledge of allegiance. Invocation. I think we have to begin with giving thanks. As we listen to the stories of all of the people around this table, they seem to have survived the storm quite well. But also give thanks to our management and our staff, our personnel, who provided first responder services to people who needed it. And those are people who don't have drop cars. They don't have vehicles on their own. And we want to give thanks to the role that the RTA staff played in facilitating both the preparation for and the recovery of from the storm. It made me proud to be part of this organization, and it makes me thankful to the Lord that we have organizations such as this. So on that note, I will simply end with a thank you to both Brian and everybody here, and God, and end with an amen.
Amen.
Over here today.
Oh.
Moving around. We have some water issues in there, so.
Oh.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you have any water damage in the electrical closet also?
It wasn't storm related. It was air conditioning unit related, and so it's repaired, but it's not, the flag was put out of the way so we could get a vacuum cleaner in there and clean up the water. So.
Got it. All right, let's begin with a roll call. Miss Kitty, I'm sorry, Miss Lynette, you are on.
Catherine,
I don't need to give Miss Kitty another job.
Right.
She's got enough to do. Besides, she complains a lot about it.
Daryl Lykoff.
Here.
Wilbur James. Lily Jean Johnson. Here. Marvin Keene. Joseph Lazara.
Here.
Rob Sheehan.
Here.
Bernard Silverman.
Here.
Henry Wilson.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
That was a right harrowing experience.
We're just getting ready to call your name for the roll call.
Yeah, you're a W, so you got the
Mr.
answer.
Lazara, would you push that packet over to Randall?
Uh,
No, that's all right. He moved over to you.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure where this one was. Okay. Yes, sir. Oh, good to see you. Glad you made it.
Okay.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Yes, I did. Mr. Chairman, we have a forum.
Thank you.
Very good.
You're welcome.
I do not see any of our normal public visitors, so we will move on past the public comment. Do we have any employee recognition, Brian?
Yes, we do.
We must. You guys do a lot of work these last couple of weeks.
I wanted to recognize one person in particular. He did do it alone, but if you think about all the challenges related to finding people to provide emergency services, making sure that you know, their homes are okay before, you know, essentially letting them work.
We just want to end.
If you think about, you know, basically, and I'll give you more information about this in the hurricane update, but we basically had to split our operations between Myrtle Beach and Conway, primarily because it was so difficult to get across the river. We just left buses over there.
I counted 9 vehicles down
There was 9 vehicles over there. We basically cut ourselves in half like an amoeba, I think. And think about trying to schedule people so that they don't get stranded on the wrong side of the river. In the face of his home being cut off by the water, which was cut off for a short amount of time. He was here every day, and we wouldn't have been able to do this without Doug. So,
Very good.
How did you get here?
huh?
How did you get
He's
here?
right behind you. You can ask him.
Oh, how'd you get here? If your
Well,
roof was cut
Across the
off?
way, we stayed off the highway.
Stay with somebody else?
So we stayed with some family.
Oh, okay.
I stopped by the transit center.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Job well done. Job well done.
At the transit center, the gentleman worked on blanking on his name. He actually rented a condo on the beach and came work every day.
Yeah, they, some people did that.
Yeah, we had a few of those. I meant some other highlights.
They were
Tom
reasonable too.
Berta. Well, this is something we found out. All our mechanics live on the Conway side of the river.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
So one-armed bandit Tom is checking fluids and making sure that our buses are ready to go every morning over there in Myrtle Beach. It's just amazing, you know, you could have thanked a million people.
Well, they love the company.
You
The
know,
company's
Michelle's
good.
on vacation and
Because-
she's making sure that we're getting our information out on time.
Good.
You know, it's just amazing how people step
Michelle,
up.
did you leave town?
So-
Were you-
Well, people,
Well, I was already scheduled to be out of town,
Yeah, where did you go?
to LA, from
Oh.
Hot Springs.
Wow.
So she had time zone issues also.
So I appreciate it. You know, I
people
really
will do the
Folks
best for
are
the company
amazing.
when the company is good to them.
And I'd like to add one thing, and I'd like to echo Rod's thanks to everybody, and also Doug and then Michelle, or whoever did all the updates. I'm assuming that was you. And so that was a good job. And the other thing is, I think that for those people who weren't there at the meeting last night, Brian did a great job. He not only read that meeting perfectly and gave, you know, a pretty concise report, you know, and I think he knew he had the votes and he did what he had to do. But I think the nicest thing that, to me, was that there was no overpromising and no grandiose plans shared, you know. I think he told council what we were doing, what they could expect, how hard we were trying, and what we were trying to do with the money. And I think it was a good presentation, and I think it was.
Did you mention paying off the debt?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, quickly.
As much as in there.
As much as they
In there.
needed to
As long as
know.
it's in there, that's all I care
There was
about.
60,000 on that first
Yeah,
slide.
right.
Yeah.
And I think
Same slides I showed y'all, so.
we didn't promise new service, you know, immediately, and we didn't have, you know, big plans for great numbers. But I think he told the story.
But
Very well.
Bernie's right. I was not able to get there because I got stuck in traffic for an hour over by the university trying to get there. But it's very tempting when you've got the money that the county is giving us. It's very tempting to overpromise. It's to promise the world and, you know, extension and all of that sort of stuff. So it's also Brian being concise. That's pretty good.
There's two other comments.
I don't know, is that a compliment or what?
I meant it as a compliment.
I thought you just left out pages 5 through 8. Where's the rest of the pages?
You know, the one thing didn't get any feedback from the audience, but you made the comment that no expansion right now. However, there's going to be some expectations to other municipalities because they're now, we weren't ever contributing. So you put.
So you at least got the equity issue out there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
In
and
the record.
yes.
And then the preservation of 2 and 3, and then the entertainment show, I think, was important too, just to indicate that, yeah, we're gonna continue with this money, continue those services, so that got out too.
And if we do have a service committee meeting again someday, we can present the results of the survey, a lot of survey, about 1,000 surveys were done of the entertainment shuttle. It is worth keeping, is the bottom line. It is worth keeping, it's significant, it's important to both the ridership that are visitors, but also the ridership that works. We can talk about that.
Good.
All right. Doug, this was all about you, so
Appreciate it.
we'll move off of employee
So
recognition.
budget got approved last night, Doug, just so you know.
Awesome. Do I have any amendments to the agenda? No? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the August meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the August meeting.
Did we spell Mr. Lejean's name right?
We did.
Good. The worst things that can happen with spell check, not with spell checks, with spell correct.
Oh.
All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Meeting was canceled for service, and Pat, I'll simply suggest that we are ready to present good results from the large amount of surveys. And I want to thank Michelle for managing, coordinating the collection of all of those. We got survey data on, I think, 4 time blocks, and about 1,000 surveys were processed.
How many?
About 1,000, the actual number, I think it might have been in the high 900s.
Yeah, it was just shy of 1,000.
Yeah. And,
I'll let you know.
there are a couple of suggestions, but not much. It was a strong survey tool in terms of getting people responding to it.
I'm assuming that we will get a service committee done in October, probably that 3rd week. And obviously, first and foremost on that agenda will be an entertainment shuttle strategy. So it'll include the survey and what we're gonna do moving forward on that, so. I haven't had time to look at the survey or think about the strategy, although I have some ideas. So I'll put that does not appear on my project sheet, but it'll be on there.
Well, and in any numeric sense, if 6 is the highest people could score, you're running high fives in the 5 range for most people. The only group, frankly, that were not completely satisfied are the J1 students, who depended upon the entertainment shuttle for work scheduling. So if people said they were riding the shuttle for purposes of work, they tended to have somewhat lower scores. But even those, when asked if they would be willing to pay for it, by and large said yes. There's actually support for $1 a ride.
Okay.
There's not much support for a day pass. But by and large, the ratings are very, very high. And there's no particular group other than the J1 that I could point to that looked like they were distressed. And there's no particular run or day. There are a couple of days that it looked like it was down, and I know there were days you were scrambling to provide the equipment. Oddly enough, just as a teaser, most people got their information by seeing the bus, seeing the shuttles, as opposed to getting it in a more formal sense. There was an orientation for J1 students, and they got some information there, but a frequent response was, yeah, I saw the bus on the road.
You know, in Los Alamos, Florida, they have the entertainment show going around their town. And they charge $1.
Yeah.
And they tell you right away, you gotta pay the $1, sir. Right? There's 3 of us, so every way we went, we gotta pay that $3 for 3 people.
So you watered it up, got it wet, and stuck it in the box?
Well, I think the only
They have a different type of box than we do.
The only concern that I saw in the data about the $1 is people don't want to be charged for their kids. You know, they want the $1 for grown-ups and free ride for kids, and they would be quite satisfied. Okay.
That'll give the adults incentive to go somewhere. I know the kids are not free.
Well, and bless your heart, you can just imagine, because they did collect data. It wasn't completely reliable, but, you know, as to the composition of the group that got on. Was it 1 parent, 1 adult and 2 children, 2 adults, 3 adults, 1 adult, 2 children, a kid in the crib? You know, there are a couple of what looked like single parents struggling with these kids getting on the road, and you gotta see
That's
credit
because
for that.
Dad was playing golf.
Yeah.
Well, and they're bringing
As
on,
well
you know,
as
their
should.
strollers and their wagons.
There were strollers, there were wagons, there were, yes, that's exactly right. It's just saying, it's not a way I would want to travel, but, you know, to their credit, they used it. Okay. Finance Committee report. We also had no meeting, and we have no Marvin. Brian, would you like to take us through the August financials?
Sure.
Or Ron?
It's been a while since I've looked at this, and I'm not sure what Ron was doing at the time, but I was working on the notes,
Oh, good Lord.
and Ron found a bunch of mistakes. So maybe
gone
next
through this
time,
morning,
maybe
what
next
happened
time I
here?
won't work on the notes by myself.
So who wants to give
Um,
this report? Ron?
No, we're
I
gonna
think
tag
it's
team
nice to see Ron visibly.
You gotta go over the notes?
Yeah, I just,
in a minute, in a minute.
it's
Here,
the beginning of the month,
across
I
the
usually.
table here. So I'm sending you around replacement notes.
Oh.
And it was just a few numbers that were messed up. It was one of those things where I think I thought I did it and I didn't.
Finance side?
And so, just in general, you know, expenses held steady. I think that we were pretty close on what our overage was on the budget last month to this month, to August. And I'm still expecting a significant reduction of that overage for September. And that's been bolstered by the hurricane, and I'll talk a little bit more about how the hurricane has affected our expenses in the general manager's report. But, you know, we basically didn't operate for 4 days.
They also affected the fare box, but presumably the expenses offset a little bit of fare.
For every dollar of transit you put out there, you get 10 cents back, so it's a win-win situation for us from that perspective. And it was a really tough call. I mean, Doug can attest to this in terms of, you know, when to get back in there and start providing service, and you know, things were so beautiful on the coast.
Yeah.
That, you know, and everything inland was going crazy.
We went to the beach 2 days after.
Yeah, it was difficult, but I think we did pretty well, as it relates to that. But so we only lost about 3 days of service, and I think we spent about 22,000 in labor, and probably another 5 to 7 in expenses. So this was a little bit more significant than Matthew. It's still going on. We still have 58 people in shelters, mostly down in Bucksport. So I don't know that they'll need us for transferring them out. But I'll fill you in more on that in
How about the
general
airport?
manager's report.
Shuttle?
We didn't have anybody come out of the airport. They were able to run flights right up until the end there, and were able to clear it out. So I don't think we had anybody coming out of the airport.
What's nice, I guess a side benefit to this was these variances that are somewhat significant in August will drop because of the limited operating hours in September, so it'll help for the year-to-date variances, particularly in the labor side of it. It'll start to look a little rosier at the end of September.
And what about our drivers, CSR, et cetera, who lost all this pay?
A lot of them picked up PTO, which we desperately needed to get those PTA accrual balances down. So, I mean, again, that was another added benefit,
Say
was
that
a
in
lot of
English,
people
they pick up
utilized their
part-time hours, is that?
No,
Paid time off.
paid
paid
time
time
off.
Oh,
off.
paid time off.
So a lot of people had massive paid time off balances, especially people that have been around longer. So they tapped that very heavily, which brought those balances down, which will help
Yep.
make the balance sheet look better.
We're also
where
helping them with unemployment
accrual
benefits if they
vacation
want to go after unemployment.
They can get like temporary unemployment.
Yeah. Although the PTO is a much better deal, because that's dollar for dollar, you know that.
So other than that, you know, fuel was still high in August.
That part.
And so we're taking it on the chin in that line item. As in legal and professional services, we talked about that last meeting and what's going on with that. You know.
Hires are probably a problem too.
I'm sorry?
Hires were over budget.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I mean, that was in good shape for a while, but I think really what happened is we had all 4 of the new flyers need tires
Oh, my
at the
God.
same
Is
time.
that the new one? You're not talking about the Texas, the Dallas.
No, I'm talking about the
The
new
new
buses,
buses.
have been operating for a year, a little over a year, and they
Has
all
it
needed
been that
tires at
long?
the same time.
We got like
And they've got
150,000
120,000 on them.
I like the idea that half of them you're putting retread, so we don't have the same problem next time around.
You know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Whoever's idea that was,
Seems like we
it
were
was
just out there
So,
looking at
yeah.
them.
Well, they're 2 years old on you.
July and July
They're,
last year.
they came in July of 17, so they're a little over a year.
I saw a bus going up 90 yesterday, but that, we don't have, we haven't remembered.
You saw a bus going up there?
Up 90.
I did too.
Probably just getting around traffic going up to International Boulevard.
Yeah.
You know, we pulled out all the cards to try to get around as best we could, so.
Anybody try to get on it?
Huh?
Did anybody try to get on it?
No, I don't think so. I was stopped at a door and I thought it was bad.
Did International Boulevard stay open?
Yeah, 90 closed for a
Yeah.
certain amount of
Yeah.
I
time,
was
so
stuck without that.
that
At-
reduced,
at
that
Tilly's
reduced the
Swamp,
utilization
right?
of.
Where that
Bridge
bridge
Swamp,
is-
and then back up with our general.
And you see as you come around onto the bridge, where the whole road has sunken down.
Right at the end.
Yeah,
Dead
at
ends.
the end there, yeah, that's dangerous.
So, I mean, that's all I have to say about page 2. I don't know if there's any questions. You know, again, I think we're on track for being about $45,000 over budget for the year, and that's more than covered by additional revenue that we pulled in during the year.
And how much did we get from the county for the air show?
$9,400.
And will we get any FEMA money for?
Well, we'll apply. They were saying, one thing they were talking about last night in the hurricane update was that they'd been paid for Matthew.
Oh, you did pick up on that. I was
So I'm gonna
yeah,
ask
I
them
gotta
when
attack
when we
them,
meet them on Friday about
Exactly.
whether or not we're gonna at least get 75%.
2 or 3 years later, whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that'd be great, though. I mean,
You know, I don't think I'm too worked up about the funding. I mean, the county's paying us for this service anyway through their normal,
Right.
and we would have used way more than 22,000 in local match for doing regular service the whole month. So it's not a huge deal. If we get the money, we get the money. It's eligible. I've even talked to FTA about the possibility of applying for emergency operating funds, which I will do if they allocate money to that program. But they were telling me that no money's allocated to it yet, and you should go to FEMA, which I would rather
Yeah.
stick my head in a blender than go.
one thing that's unusual is we're trying to get 5307 grant back on track by not tapping into the final month and a half of this year and rolling into the next year. So this FEMA money, although we may have to wait a couple of years to pull it in, it's gonna work out nicely because we can replace that 5307 gap with FEMA money. It's like, wow, that worked. If it was gonna hit, September was the month, so, you know, that helped us out too by dumb luck, so.
And when do we find out what the total for the first quarter is?
Should be next week when we get the payment.
What's the estimate, 540?
Yeah, we might get some information on that.
For the 4th quarter, did you say?
No, for the first quarter of the user fee. road
Oh, yeah,
use fee.
yeah.
It's estimated at 541, and they were telling us last time it should be higher than that because of that mistake they had where they had to go back and recoup a bunch of money from other, from individuals. Remember they had the,
Yeah.
Just remember
Yeah,
that
yeah,
$100 of that should go toward North Myrtle Beach transfer.
$100?
I paid for
$100?
$100 because I paid for 2.
But it's only $6.50 per car.
No,
$13.
it doesn't make any difference, I'm adding up the
We'll
years.
start keeping track of that. So did you have a question? Mr. Wilson? You were talking about.
No, I was wondering, you had on the legal and professional service, like they were.
Yeah, 20%.
What is professional?
We had 2 legal issues going on that I don't have coverage for like insurance or anything like that because it hasn't gone to court yet. We're dealing with 2 legal issues. We talked about it in executive session last meeting. We can go into it today if you want to.
Yeah, well, no,
So
I was just wondering what professional service.
it's the legal side. It's not professional
That's-
service. It's the legal side. So anything else on page 2? I think, Ron, you want to speak to the revenue side. We let me see if I can do it in English, and then if anybody needs additional explanation, I can kick in.
Thanks.
We recognize the 390 that the county switched over from the capital grant. We recognize that all in one fell swoop on July 15th when they made that payment. And then we've also are recognizing the revenue from the user fee on a monthly basis, estimate, basically an accrual basis. And so that, by doing that, I mean, that's what, 366,000
That's
for
183,000 a month.
for October and-
That was
I mean, for
July and
August.
August. We booked July and August in August. because quite honestly, it's a whoops, it didn't even occur to me because we're used to that being deferred revenue. Well, now it's accrued revenue, and it's like, oh crap, so I forgot it in July. I thought, we really need to book that from a gap standpoint for July and August, because, you know, we are gonna receive it, it's a valid receivable. So we got that, and we'll have another roughly 183,000 to book in September, so that's making the bottom line look very healthy. And the logical question is, why do you have cash issues? Well, we got that 390 reclass of the county money plus any bank loan proceeds, so those are the two things that are really eating up that false profit, if you will. So while it looks great on paper, the reality of it is we still are hurting for cash all year because of those two windfalls, not windfalls, but loans, if you will.
Well, they're one-time money.
Right, but what it does illustrate is the road to recovery. I mean, those dollars are coming in, and so it'll all balance out. But you can see here on page 3, about 2/3 down the page here, a change in that position of $267,000 for the month. And that's a good thing, but it's we don't actually see the money until October 15th. So, you know, on paper, as Ron said, it's very healthy. And the revenue to expenses for the year is going to look very healthy. So, and that's a good thing.
Very good.
So you have replacement page for the notes on page 4. I don't really think any of the language changed. We did change some numbers to match up, and we will insert this page before we publish it, obviously. But none of the language, we just changed numbers inside.
Yeah, the verbiage is all good, it's just the dollar amounts and the percentages on 4 or 5 of these were incorrect, so we updated those. But we need to, there's too many, we need to correct that before we post it to the website.
So any questions on notes?
Brian, I have a question about the budget. We can take that question now, or we can take that question in manager's report. It's part of finance. It goes back to the approval of the budget that we did last month, and things kind of got out of tumble because of the transportation committee not meeting. But from talking around with other board members, I don't think any of the board members are enthusiastic or even supportive of a balloon payment 2 years out in 2020 to resolve the debt. And I think there will be a time as you continue to adjust the budget where you probably need to state what the expectation is in budget terms.
And did that in the accomplishments.
Okay.
Goals, so we can talk about it there, or and it's higher than what's in the budget.
Accomplishment goals is a fun place. I think I speak for the other board members that this is one, we really did want to support the budget. We knew that it had to go to the county. We thought it was going to the transportation committee. We hope that that the balloon payment part didn't get written into stone. And besides, Bernie talked to me about it all the way home when we drove home after the last meeting. So
I don't remember talking the same one word about it.
So I want to confirm that we've got a plan B for that. Okay.
Well, certainly any new incoming money that happens, and I think there's lots of opportunity for that. We'll put some of that on the debt and some of it into
Into your reserve.
Right, because we're not gonna change expenses.
You know, when the shelters are paid off, that money the state does not give us now because we're paying it back to shelters, that big lump sum could be applied to the loan, right?
Our budget.
Not
includes it.
directly, but you pull in any money from outside, then that reduces our need for local funds.
Right.
So our $80,000 this year that we got in state mass transit funds to match our urban program would go to 150 once that loan's paid.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Um,
And then my second question is, now this may not have happened, you were gonna go meet with Conway National Bank because you've got to deal with the,
yeah.
the payment that, with Hurricane Fury and that sort of thing. Has that meeting occurred yet?
No, but it needs to happen this month, so I'll get over there and let you know.
And we'd like to hear that,
Yeah, what, you know, what the bank's,
the continuing payment
Opinion.
down to that, yeah.
so, I mean, if things go well and we do see a higher revenue associated with the user fee, then I think one thing I'd like to do is increase our monthly payment. You know, it might go from 6,000 to 10,000 or something like that. But we wanna have the money before we.
This is it's a good strategy. Have it before you get to spend it.
I got into it with Kathy Hennessy about counting our chickens before they hatch. And I was like, what are you talking about? In this line of work, we've got to count them before they're conceived. So,
Okay.
we're not doing that anymore.
We kind of decided, we looked at if these registration fee estimates by the county are conservative, we sort of loosely agreed, and don't write this down, that maybe we'd take half of the additional windfall and just use it for debt service. So hopefully those are very conservative estimates by the county, which would definitely accelerate paying that down if that were to happen.
Well, I continue to have children who continue to need cars, and so
There you go.
I'm a little bit like Kitty with 5 cars that have all been licensed, or maybe 6. I lose track of them and the count of children, but I know that we're supporting this somehow.
That's the beauty of that revenue source.
You want a bus run past your house too?
Really, that 1,200 houses development, they had a big debate last night. Got approved. Two votes, both of them got approved, 8-3 and 7-4.
Right.
1,200 houses, 2 cars per house, 2,400
That's
houses.
what
I was thinking, I was doing the math on
$6.50.
that.
Right.
That's at least 2,000 cars in my
It
book.
is.
Yeah.
Judging from the resistance last night, I thought it was politically incorrect to bring it up, but that went through my mind too. There's 23.
It is.
Right.
I did the
Well,
math
egg
Egg them
there.
on, egg them on.
All right, I'm sorry, back to the budget.
Okay, so,
Or back to the finance report.
I don't know that I have anything exciting to report on the balance sheet. I didn't answer any questions.
Cash requirements okay?
Cash requirements is in pretty good shape if we can get to the 15th, and right now I know that the check from the city for $62,500 is coming next week. And so we're just sort of waiting, and it got approved last night by the county, so we should see that. And I've been in
Georgetown?
touch with Cell, and they have an invoice, so it should be paid sometime between now and the 15th. So I think from a cash perspective, we're in good shape until January. From an expense side, the payroll this week was in the neighborhood of 92,000 instead of the normal 99,000, so we'll have a little bit of a break there. So
Have you got your forklift yet?
we haven't. It's like 14 to 16 week turnaround on those things. I'm not sure why.
Boys and their toys, this is the most important.
But I have asked for a little bit of a break on the lease, so I haven't gone back to doing that. But since we're buying something from them, maybe they can cut us a little slack on the lease. But so far, haven't heard from them.
There's a couple other issues too that I'd really be happy to know, but the current ratio spiked with the addition of those county receivables are almost up to 2.5, which is very nice, quick ratio, same thing followed suit. So that massive receivable, it's actually strongly, it's valid, I mean, it's gonna happen, so that should make you smile. So we got our liabilities covered
Current
nicely.
ratios are going the direction Mr. Wilson wanted.
Yeah, massively.
Well,
That was
just
very
to
nice.
take that one step further, we had I'll call it a clerical error. I double counted one of the reductions in our SMTF contract. Instead of 162, we're supposed to be getting like 182, 183 and change. So there's a small amendment coming on our 5311 contract for additional SMTF funding, state money. For the first time in a long time, Ron were like, man, we gotta get that contract in here so we can pull that money down.
Yeah.
We don't actually have to have that money, so we kinda had a little chuckle about that.
Yeah, it's the first time ever, it's like, what do we do with this money?
No, we'll just pull it down in October.
Used to it, but
No, we're not, but it was nice because it's been stressful.
it's good to hear you make that kind of an error as opposed to some other kinds of errors.
Right. Well, it wasn't my error. So, it's the state's error. We gotta fix it.
Larry, I guess a couple other issues too is just, you want to go through the KPIs first?
No, go ahead.
No. The audit, they have resurfaced, it's that time of the year, so they're gonna start field work, and this worked out really nicely last year. The first week of January, which what that does is give us a chance to clean the books up as well as conceivably possible. So that accelerates the field work massively. So, you know, I think that worked out good last year. We're gonna stick with that plan. They're sending us the engagement letter later this week, so I have no issues with them. I thought they were great, obviously, and then,
It's a good time to leave Toledo and come back here as well. There's no threat of serious snowstorm in the first week of January, first couple of weeks, so.
None whatsoever, yeah. Anything less than, you know, anything over 18 inches anyways, I should say, but.
Oh, in Ohio, it snows October 1st.
I think it does, and it quits on May 12th, but yeah.
Right.
It's,
I know.
And then we've already got the pull by client list, so we're starting to assemble this thing already. So we have to get it done in advance for the state audit, which is in about 3 weeks. So this is, knock on wood, if we can get this thing all reconciled up, it should go a whole lot smoother this year, which is good.
Do we have other audits this coming year, and there's no triennial this year?
Yeah, there is.
There's an SCDOT triennial, which
Starts
is,
October 23rd.
Yeah, well, it's already
Oh,
started.
this
We
year.
sent them our stuff, and it was supposed to happen Hurricane Day, so we said, no, you're not coming. And so they rescheduled it for October 23rd, and I just talked to her this morning, we rescheduled it again for December
Oh, you pushed it back?
4th. I didn't push it back, their request.
December 4th?
December 4th.
Happy birthday, Ron.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's right.
Day
Today was my birthday.
Day
yeah.
before your birthday?
Happy damn birthday, here we go.
So, but
You know what you'll be
they
doing.
requested the extension.
I'm taking the 5th off, sorry.
Did you have anything else?
What's that?
Did you have anything else? You said you had a couple of points.
Yeah, the other thing was you had asked about the estimated cost to complete on the budget last month at $45,000. We took a quick look at it. And it's 4 things, primarily fuel, which it was just due to a price spike. And this is only 3-month cost to complete estimate was at 45. So there's 45K in fuel spike, which I guess you could stop right there, but really there are a few other offsetting things that were larger. The legal expenses, a couple of items that Brian alluded to, were about 21,000 over. And those were kind of offset to bring us back to the 45 roughly, was general liability insurance savings by reducing the fleet cost, and what else was it? Oh, the deductible, we increased the deductible to bring the premium down. That was about 8,000. And then
For this year.
for this year, advertising expenses, like again we alluded to, we got to go through all of them. Some of them are public information. Matter of fact, everything related to advertising is sitting in public information, but some of that is probably bus wraps and things that need to be moved in as part of the audit review process. We're gonna have to go through all the advertising and see what really needs to be shifted into advertising expense. But right now, that's sitting at 8K favorable. And when we addressed all these when we went through the budget process for FY19 and incorporated all that into the new budget. So with the registration fees and things, we should be in good shape. That should resolve itself after September.
Brian, the SCDOT, from my education, what kinds of things, it's not like we do triennials every year.
It's exactly
What do
like
they
a
look,
triennial.
what- same stuff?
The feds come and review them every 3 years. And so we're a sub-recipient to the state. So the state comes and reviews their sub-recipients.
They look the same type items.
It's the exact same
Okay,
type of
thank you.
We're ready for it.
Yes,
So it's
good.
not gonna be an issue.
And you don't have any outstanding issues from the last triennial that,
I have a couple we're still working on, mostly related to that ADA
I
capacity
wondered if
constraint.
the ADA was still.
They've given me extensions, so we're good on that. And we have one on DVE as well that we need to get done, so.
Really?
Triennial still got some open.
I thought we were in good shape for DVs.
Well, we're good shape, but there's, I mean, it's mostly to do with the reporting.
Clerical
of things.
size, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
We still have a few of those to
Okay.
deal with.
We don't have, they have criteria, things that we don't normally track, so it becomes this
All right.
groveling through minutia routine that we gotta get a handle on how to.
Well, and if you think about how that DVE percentage is calculated, there's a numerator and a denominator, and we're calculating the numerator and the denominator incorrectly. The denominator is how much money could you put towards DB? How much is actually possible that you could have a DB, not your total budget? So we're working through the minutia on that.
A lot lower denominator.
And so in our percentage, you know, our goal is up to 6%, and we're about to put $11,000 out on signs with a DB, so it's gonna be huge for percentage. Yeah, 11 to
So
12.
Brian, does Strober's classify as, no?
No, they're not DB. They're big too. They're a lot bigger. Even though they're based in Georgetown, they're a national firm, so they go all over the place. So, and I think that's what Ron was working on when I was doing the notes. He was trying to straighten out our payroll stuff, I think. Isn't that what you're doing,
Don't
Tom?
give me, you've effectively muzzled me, I've become political.
Yes,
I'm not going
yes,
there.
you can't say anything else. So KPIs, from an operating perspective, we had a really good month, I would say. 71,000 rides. It's gonna take a huge hit in September for obvious reasons, but that was right on par with what we did last August. Was actually a little bit lower, but I would probably equate that to weather and the entertainment shuttle not quite as strong as it was last year. But our normal regular routes all, I'm trying to remember, all increased, I think.
So
Except for maybe 15 South. So security
No impact
has
at
not
all?
had an impact that I can see.
Well, that's surprising.
That is surprising. So it's, a lot of people out there using it, and I think once we get people using it, they keep using it. So that's really good, so.
Good. And what about, when are we gonna get the two new buses?
Probably next fall,
Okay, a year
at
from
the
now?
earliest. Yeah.
And how
And
about,
it's like a 14-month turnaround for those. 14 to 6 weeks on forklifts,
yeah.
12 to 14 months on buses.
And how about the two internationals, or anything on that, on those two?
I will address that in my GM report, please.
Guess
Because
gotta
you've
stick
already
with it.
stolen a bunch of my thunder as it were, so. Ridership on paratransit, it's actually kind of leveled off, but we did quite a few in August. I think that's a 31-day kind of thing. But 0.87 on the passengers per hour, which is higher than we've had I guess we had that in June, but it seems to be getting back to normal. And I'm really excited about EcoLane coming in with their new software and getting some real-time improvements in our in how we're scheduling and utilizing labor in the paratransit system. So I have high hopes beginning, the first of the year, and how we're scheduling that service and trying to squeak out a little bit more efficiency in it. So I think it'll be very helpful, and our clients will like it too. I think there's a lot of bells and whistles there where clients can make appointments, and it'll really help us on the reporting side as well. So I'm pretty excited. They're under contract, and they should be coming here probably within the next 30 days or so to start integrating service, and they'll be up and running sometime first quarter of the next calendar year. So grants, obviously we basically spent down our urban grant. We finished it up in August, the existing grant.
5307. We got just
We had a little bit left in
9,000
September.
capital bill, everything else is.
So we will have completely spent down that grant.
We did spend it down, I just can't draw it because the system's closed, but I can do that Friday, so then we'll
So
be done.
it sunset on September 30th. We have a new grant in the system that we're waiting on split letter from GSAS on how much money is available under FY18 5307. Once we get that uploaded, then we can, it's ready to go and it'll be input in the system. And I expect it will be in force first week in November.
How much is that?
Which is so in time for us to start pulling down October expenses.
How much do you expect that to be?
It'll be 1.5 million
Okay.
total. And it's almost evenly split between operations and
How we doing, I gotta chime in, because that's, my lifeline is 5207. How we doing on a split letter? Is there an issue with that, or is it?
They said they were gonna get it to me this week. So we can't upload it right now because the system's down.
Okay.
So as long as I get it by Friday, we'll put it in on Monday and get rolling on the
It's
grant.
critical because we'll blow through that registration money somewhere in that time frame. We gotta make sure we have that in place, or we're gonna be
Right.
right back to scraping payrolls together.
So when we get 1.5 million for 307, and it's split between capital and preventive maintenance,
No, between operating and preventive maintenance.
and operating preventive maintenance.
I used the term capital because preventive maintenance gets paid at the 80-20 split
Right.
rather than the 50-50.
FDA has their own language, and it doesn't line up with GAAP very well, so it tends to cause confusion. But what they're calling, capital preventative maintenance, has nothing to do with capital. It's preventative maintenance operating expense. Capital expenditure is a whole different animal. We do get, in that grant, we do get about 60,000, 70,000 for IT and software and things of that nature. So it's kind of nice. It's ostensibly for security, but that's pretty gray, broad areas. So it's kind of nice for keeping up with the IT inventories and
It is
supplies.
80/20, the PM side.
Yeah.
And we're overmatching all.
You want to speak to this resolution?
I will in the general manager's report,
Okay.
which I guess we're ready for if anybody, if no one doesn't, unless someone has a question about the financials.
Page 9, the fixed roof
KPI? Yep.
on-time performance.
Yeah, it dipped in August. Let's put start of the month Doug on the spot. What do you think, man?
I think we dropped on that on-time performance with, also it's called my Route 7 with the
He
community.
was here for employee appreciation, he wasn't here to be.
Unfortunately, as a result, Route 7 ties in with everything that runs down in Myrtle Beach, so when Route 7 is behind schedule, it goes everything else off. So a lot of times people say, especially that 3 o'clock crowd down or 8 o'clock down in the morning, not to avoid having 40, 50 people stuck in Myrtle Beach, we hold all the buses and that goes everything off those events, so we offset the service with it.
Summertime, we kind of expect to get down in the 80s. Obviously, it happened with a little bit more regularity than we'd hope. And there's not a whole lot we can do about the 7. And I don't think there's really any other rerouting to do. And of course, this is all before the storm hit. I mean, I can't, I mean, during the storm, we split it. We only operated it between the university and downtown Myrtle Beach, and then we ran a shuttle from here over to the university, just because you couldn't keep a schedule by getting into these long lines of traffic on 501 business or bypass. So, I think it's probably, the perfect storm of just tons and tons of traffic in August. I don't have numbers for y'all on the fare box failures, but I'm sure that had something to do with it.
That's these things left out.
Well, that's true.
The entertainment shuttle is showing an issue of on-time performance. That's from the survey data we had, and that would be pretty thickly in August performance as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, we don't really run that on the schedule. We just try to keep those things 25, 30
But I'm just
minutes
saying it's a
apart.
customer issue. Yeah. It's not as empirical as the other on-time indicators that you've got.
Yeah, because entertainment shuttle would not go into this number. But it, try to do the best we can, but I haven't really analyzed it. We've talked, I mean, really the only fix that I can think of, and Doug, you can weigh in on this if you want, but is possibly staggering the Route 7, have it come in at the bottom of the hour. And then we're not affecting on-time performance for everything else in Myrtle Beach, and you've got a decent place to wait for the bus, that might, you know, even though it takes away the pulse, you know, that we kind of pride ourselves on, it might be a way to attack the issue of
It
one
sounds
bus
like a
being
false
late.
way to solve that problem, though, because it sort of forces a delay in the system that we then don't call on time.
And I agree with you, Rob. It would look better on the books, but it would impact our passengers
Right.
much more than.
I'd almost rather try to keep the wheels running.
Did we,
So then you have to accept 76% on
Yeah, and I
performance.
think our passengers would, I would.
I mean, just by virtue of having
Yeah.
the connection there.
have we done anything yet about going into whether or not we're going to charge a fare on this bus? The entertainment bus?
Yeah,
We
no, but I
talked
think
about
that's-
it last time.
That's in the next, that would be
Okay.
in the next month.
Yeah,
And then, yeah,
we'll talk about it at service committee.
all right.
So we're ready for the general manager report. Any other questions on financials?
This is my meeting. Are we ready for the general manager? Question.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman.
Moving on to general manager.
Thanks for,
I don't want you to think I'm sleeping over
I
there.
deserve that.
Too salty today.
I'm gonna pass
That's what happens
around,
when I'm up at 5 in the morning fixing the toilet and my wife got up.
I'm gonna pass around the project listing so you guys can peruse it while I'm talking.
Right.
And here you go. Thank you. So, let's see here.
And you,
Hurricane update. We talked about this a little bit, but we lost 3 days of shutdown, 3 days of full shutdown, which obviously is a big hit on ridership. We incurred hours on September 18th and 19th that did not transport anyone. Those were mostly late night staging of buses in case they were needed. And that was when the flooding was hitting Longs and the Route 9 area. So we actually had buses staged on either side of where Route 9 shut down at 2 fire stations. And they didn't need us. I mean, I think you'll hear the county say it last night, but you heard the county say it last night, is residents did a phenomenal job of self-evacuating. I mean, if you think about, I think the number I heard is 8,000 to 10,000 homes with water. And we only, I think we maxed out at like 196 in shelters after we emptied the shelters from the hurricane sheltering. So we, I
This
think there
was
was
a storm that people took seriously.
yeah.
And the media reports, you know, if anything, it was over exodus, but that's a good problem to have.
Right. And so we transported about 1,000 people so far. About half of that was evacuation of the coast before the hurricane. The state sent us 10 buses, so we did not use the school system. We evacuated zones A, B, and C.
You say the state sent us 10
Yeah, they
buses?
sent us 10 coaches, so that first couple nights we
Were
had.
did they look like school buses?
No, they were over-the-road coaches. They looked
Okay.
like tour buses. And as it were, I mean, it was still a little bit of overkill, which is what you want. But I was pretty pleased that you know, we could run this evacuation if we had to. You know, if we couldn't get any help, I think we could do it.
When
you evacuated from C, really?
Yes.
when the school buses are involved, or the state buses, are you in charge of that then?
Yes.
So you're in charge of the evacuation and the other players are helpers, but
Right.
you get to call the shots on it? Okay.
We direct them where to go. And so we did a lot of tandem runs. We sent our buses out with a coach behind it so they could learn the routes. And then at night, I think in the future, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. operations is not really useful.
Yeah.
So I think we'll eliminate that next time. It really depends on when evacuation starts, and at this time it started
A
noon.
week ahead of time.
Noon on that day, so by 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, we've pretty much cleared out everybody who wants to get out right now. And then, you know, going back and doing stragglers the next morning is probably the way you go. We have to be off the road there's a rule there. It's like at least 12 hours before tropical force winds, and something like that. So they pulled them out pretty early, especially, you know, at this point, it was a Category 4 storm, and we're going, we need to get out,
I
so.
can be pretty critical of things in South Carolina compared to other places, but I have to say, this is the best disaster response governmental units, organizations that I have ever seen in any of the places I've lived in. And a number of people have said that to me. Initially I thought it was just that Nikki Haley did it really well when she was in charge, but good Lord, even this governor seems to.
Well, yeah, man,
And I don't think it's the governor any longer that is the key part. I think it's the organization below them and the way they practice.
Well, you hear it all the time.
But to his credit, he made the call and he made it
He
in a
did.
timely fashion, and
He didn't walk it back.
yeah, so I think it wasn't hemming and hawing at all, so I'll agree with you on that. I think, and I'll say the two emergency managers in our region, Sam down in Georgetown and Randy up here in Horry, are second to none. They're just really
Randy-
solid
Randy
managers.
Webster gave us a very good summary of everything, and a testament to Brian's relationship with it. He stopped by Brian's chair before he spoke. Thank you. So I know they have a good working
Yeah.
relationship.
People they were, you know, really pleased with Randy by name. People that I wouldn't even think would pay any attention to this. They basically said, this guy knows what he's doing, just from watching the reports.
And so after we reinserted, or we did re-entry, I can't remember what day that was, but it was pretty quickly after the storm and converted to flood. You know, we had a few days of really not sure which roads were, you know, we had the flash flood closures of roads, and so we had a few days there where we didn't run service. And then we started this limited service because we kept getting wind of a lot of people trying to get to jobs along the coast, and you know, trying to get up and running after the storm. And so we made the decision to go ahead and operate the Myrtle Beach routes, some limited service down to Georgetown. We were not using 701 because for fear of it closing down. It never did, amazingly enough. And I heard why at this point, and I can tell you. But so we were going down 544 to 17 South and getting down there that way, just to kind of make sure that we would be there. So we got to the point where it was so tough to get from Conway over to Myrtle Beach through these crossings that we split service. And we actually had drivers reporting to the Myrtle Beach Transit Center. And
Did Doug man the Myrtle Beach Transit Center?
no, he was mostly in Conway, although we were over there quite a bit.
Who manned?
It was Al and Casper and Ted, and I was over there, and so we the nice thing about regular service is you got your drivers, they know what they're doing, and you can kind of forget about it and just worry about the emergency services. We had
Well, that was a very resourceful
So you
strategy.
had buses that came
It
up
was.
from there, that came up to the college and picked up the people that you dropped home? That was a good idea.
Yeah.
So then we had, let's see here, we did transportation for flooding victims on the 20th, the 23rd, 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. And we're still going. We did a couple on Monday.
You
We
take
didn't have
pets?
no revenue out of those buses.
You don't take pets? No.
Well, for flooding victims, you can.
That was who I was asking about.
Yeah,
flooding
for
victims.
hurricane, no. And I'm not sure why. I mean, it's a resource issue, but I think it's, when you're talking about long-term flooding, they're not going to be back in their house for a while. So
Yeah.
the county tries to make provisions to board the pets as best they can.
How did we fuel buses on the other side of the road?
We used our gas cards, and I made sure that emergency management would have a fuel truck over there if we ever got cut off. I mean, that was the big issue.
And gas went up.
Yeah, a little bit. But,
Yeah, well, it was down where we were.
we never really had a fuel issue. We fueled the buses every night over in Myrtle Beach using gas cards, so we're buying at retail, but we still get our break on the taxes. I pay a little bit higher price, not much though.
And did they bring a gas truck over?
Well, they never had to. You know, the issue was, you know, depending on the flooding, there was a distinct possibility of Horry County getting cut off from the outside world, from, on a road perspective. So yeah, they were pulling in all the stops in terms of making sure resources were available. I think there was a fuel truck stationed at the airport that we would have been able to access if we'd have needed it.
And it looked like the fight between Conway mayor and others just went away. I mean, it looked,
Oh,
it
yeah.
peaked for a day or two.
Yeah, well, they wanted more data, and I think they got more data.
Okay.
And we're like, okay, we're good. So they kind of stood down on their lawsuit.
I don't know if people know the funny story that you told me about why 501 got closed again after Saturday.
Oh,
night.
yeah, well, when there's a rain event with the sand.
Saturday night, big rain.
Big rain event, the rain was puddling inside the lanes where, on 501 where we were using the
The
lanes.
sandbags were packed so well,
they
it
had
then
to-
became a river.
So yeah, so they had to shut it down again to pump out the water out between the sandbag, line of sandbags, so. On the Busby Bridge. Yeah, so,
Oh, I get it.
they're working on taking those down. It's you know, Doug and I were talking about it, it's awful when these storms happen, and, you know, so many people have, you know, just horrible stories and horrible things to deal with, but it's very enlightening, and you learn a lot about weather, you learn a lot about, you know, sort of these impacts and how they address them, and it's very interesting stuff, so.
Do you know, couple hundred years ago, the coast became very popular in Georgetown also because people who lived on the coast and they opened up Georgetown became a big mercantile center. They
That's where
couldn't
they would
get-
go to?
They couldn't get over to Conway or anywhere because of the flooding and
All the river
swamps
crossings.
and all the river
Really?
crossings, yeah.
Yeah.
And they could never get to Columbia or anything, so they became popular down, you know, toward Charleston that way.
You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Catherine, you know who I remember it from?
Yeah,
Catherine
Lamita
Lewis. Catherine Lewis.
You look pretty good for a 200-year-old
You
lady.
remember Catherine Lewis?
So,
Yeah.
Poor lady
She
is
was
not
one
with
of
us.
my mom's favorite teachers.
Well, she's one of our favorite people who used to come to different organizations and tell you about
Wonderful
the history.
historian for this area.
Yes.
Well, how do you communicate with the EOC? Are you over there or just?
sometimes,
Yeah.
they pick up the phone and call me or Doug. We called in, you know, on a regular basis. You guys need anything? I mean, we didn't get used the way, you know, you kind of anticipate getting used, and that's okay. You know, we just
Yeah.
wanted to be there if they needed us, and you know, I have a really good working relationship with the police. I mean, there's a couple of sergeants over there that I was dealing with, you know, especially after we got people into the shelters.
We went over to
Helping them move people around.
Ocean Bay Shelter up in North Myrtle. I think it's
Ocean Drive.
Ocean Drive. One person in the shelter. There were like 7 responders and more food to fill, you know, a busy camp. But there was just one person. But that's, you know, it's hard to
That's a
call.
good thing.
Still, you
It's a
never
good thing.
know.
They didn't even have a big wave.
Well, yeah. I mean,
We
if
didn't have anything.
if
for
the
a
I
year.
a Category 4 passes over, the I passes over, say, Myrtle Beach, downtown Myrtle Beach. Not China, Cherry Grove
Oh, well,
is-
Cherry Grove.
is underwater.
It's always
underwater.
underwater. It's
Right.
been
I
underwater
was
for
waiting
the
for Cherry
32
Grove
years
to
I've
go
lived
this
here.
time, and it didn't happen.
Well, and it's because the I
I
passed to
know.
the north, and it was all
Yeah.
wraparound stuff, so.
It was always flooded. You couldn't even get down the road ever.
So we've already talked
See
about,
Mountain Highway.
well, we put unmodified service back out on the street on the 30th. Was this past Sunday or the Sunday before, Doug? This past Sunday, with the exceptions of routes 1, 2, and 3. We still, Bucksport, everybody's in the shelter down there. I suppose we could start service on Bucksport at some point. And then,
You'd have to
It's
keep it to
still hard to
701,
get-
wouldn't you? You wouldn't get off of 701 much.
well, man, we just go into the rec center, so
Right.
we probably ought to get that rolling again.
And what's wasn't even the number 1?
The number 1 still has a ton of road closures, so we need to check.
Construction going on down in Bucksport, that's about
If
it.
you
Oh,
get
okay.
restricted to 701, you know, it might help people get to work.
So we'll get it out there as soon as we can. And we're keeping an eye on it, and we'll get the word out and let people know. Just can't really get to Loris at this point either on
Yeah,
several
Loris.
ones, so. So we already talked about the financial impact,
You wanna talk about the AECom?
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
The Strovus system's gonna be very helpful as we try to isolate hurricane expenses, so I just
That's right, this is his report.
put that plug on there. Okay, AECom. AECom is not the cause of the delay. The delay is us.
Yeah.
The grant is executed at FTA. We have a little over 300,000 total in a grant available to us. We are in the process of negotiating task orders 2 and 3. 2 will be for about 40 signs, including the Myrtle Beach Transit Center and Route 10. So that's first on the list. We feel like that's a good way to go. It's got some private property. It's got a good mix of the types of signs that the types of issues that we're going to see at different locations, and it's pretty concise area. And then task order 3 will be any remaining cleanup items on planning. We still have about $9,300 left in our grant with the state for the planning piece. And so there's a few odds and ends related to the database and how we're accessing information about different signs and stuff like that that they need to work on. So those ought to be those task orders will be completed and executed by the end of the month, if not sooner. And then the real limiting factor right now is we lost about 2 weeks on purchasing the signs themselves. So right now we don't have anything for them to put up. We made the order this morning, or we're making the order this morning. It's probably going to be 3 to 4 weeks before we actually get signs. But they're in motion, and we should see some signs going up here in the early part of November.
Do we have minority participation in the preparation of those signs?
It's a DBE company that's designing the sign, a company called Design the Sign.
Okay.
So they're the ones that are putting together the sign. We've decided to go with the generic version of the sign that has guides for placing numbers on there. And so the numbers will be affixed to the sign as we put them up. We talked about getting them printed with the numbers, but then, what happens if someone gets damaged and we gotta go get another sign? So that was the way we went. We had good, I think, Michelle can talk to this too, but good negotiation on what the sign was gonna look like and what information was on there. She's not paying attention to me over there, but,
She is.
so we're in good shape on that side. We're both happy. Am I right? Am I putting words in your mouth? Are you happy with the sign? Maybe not. Okay.
Not so much.
So
Well, Brian,
they're
this
moving.
is
So
like
the
having
question I
separate
have for all of
relationships.
you, the question I have for all of you, including you, Michelle, is do we want to do some sort of ribbon cutting when we put this first sign up?
Oh, fun.
Absolutely. We are.
I don't know, what do you
Let
think,
people
doing it at the transit center, or, I don't know.
I'd like to see it at the transit center, because it reinforces.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah,
people
but
there
that was
anyway.
expected. I'd almost like to do the first one that goes in the ground,
Yeah, that's a good idea, wherever it goes in.
wherever it
So
goes.
wherever it
As long
goes,
as it's not on 501.
so like on Oak Street or something.
But let's talk to AECom on that installation so we can make sure that the first one has like parking and different things, like,
Yeah, you could do like the convention center.
something like
Not in
that.
front of that fella's house.
Yeah, you don't want to put it in front of Representative Clemens'
Right.
office.
I would enter a contrary point of view. I think you want to do it when there's a first critical mass, not the first sign. Because if you do it with the first sign and you get a lot of publicity, and nobody sees any other signs for a long time, that's its own issue. So, the transit center just strikes me as where you're gonna have a lot of a lot of people with an understanding of the transit process, as opposed to out there at the convention center or something like that. So give some thought to not necessarily the very first sign, but more the first critical mass.
Well,
And
we
then
can-
signs could be installed while we were having it, you know what I mean, like
Right, yeah, that's kinda what I was thinking. So we'll figure something out and bring something to the service committee,
There's
but,
some consideration, you know that other group you need to invite whenever you set that up, the Pete's and,
yeah,
Mike group.
Okay.
I'm hoping to arrange a meeting with them, this month, before we put a sign in, just to present what we're doing,
I'll still get
and then
pestered
where we can get
were.
some input
They
from
met
them.
yesterday, so.
Did they? Yeah, we'll see when their next meeting is.
They did, I'm surprised I didn't get a nasty email last night.
You know, as far as sticking pins to the signs, those stickers that you put on the Ocean Boulevard signs have really held up well.
Yeah, the vinyl. Yeah, I mean, the word is that once we put these numbers on, they don't come off, so, yeah, I'm not too worried about that, and it is a maintenance, potential maintenance kind of headache, but, it just made sense to me.
What
at
did you
least
think
that-
of a ribbon cutting for each municipality? I mean, just to sort of tie in the community, we could do a ribbon cutting in Georgetown when you get to there, we could do one.
Well, I had not mentioned it to Michelle, so let her
Okay.
put some thought on it, and we'll come up with a plan.
Wake up, wake up. Got it.
Go from there, so. Probably don't need a update on the council discussions last night, unless anybody has any questions, and the bottom line is they approved.
No,
Our
it was
budget.
very exciting. I enjoyed it.
So you watched it online?
Oh, yes. I watched it on TV. I
well, you have
I have a new TV stations now. I have new cable line.
Oh, that's right, I
There you
remember you
go.
saying that was coming.
Yes, and it's wonderful.
Okay,
I didn't think to turn it on, but I would have liked to.
I have good,
14, channel 14.
so are any questions about county, questions, thoughts? It was pretty basic last night. I think they knew what was coming behind me, so they didn't appreciated
Ryan, will we
the,
do the same thing in Georgetown, Ms. Lily Jean?
well, I've been talking to Sel, and I'm certainly willing to do that. He hasn't asked me to do it yet in terms of a budget presentation, but,
Let's wait until you get a report.
yeah, okay. I mean, I always open it up, it's like, if you want me to come and talk to council, you let me know. And so-
Very good.
And I have a couple times. Okay, so I have good news on the internationals.
Oh, the long festering sore.
Yes, first thing is I told Tom to turn them into milk trucks. I want no evidence that they were post RTA vehicles ever. So they'll be perfectly white when they leave our yard here shortly, the next few weeks. FTA, the whole like-kind exchange process is if you want to transfer federal equity from one vehicle to another vehicle, the vehicle that you're transferring to basically has to be the same type of vehicle as the one that you're transferring from. And so finding that price point on a 30-foot cutaway, and it really boils down to the value of the vehicle.
Oh, that's what I wondered how.
So what I was trying, I mean, it's not written like that in the regs, but that's the way they want you to kind of think of it. So if you have a $205,000 vehicle and I was trying to replace it with a $125,000 vehicle, they're like, no way. And I kind of knew that, but I was hoping to get a little bit of latitude given our struggles. So what I went back to them with Plan B was, okay, if I have a $125,000 vehicle that I want to transfer the equity to, that's 61% of the value of that vehicle that we're replacing. Let me transfer 61% of the remaining equity. And they said yes. So that's what we're doing. So what that does is instead of having to reduce our grant by $210,000, which is the full amount of the equity in those vehicles, we're only going to draw it down by $117,000. So in effect,
60%.
I save, well, the other vehicle is 36% of the value. So we're gonna save about $117,000 in federal funds by doing it this way. So that's a good ending to this whole saga. And it should all be done by the end of October at the latest. I'm hoping to get it pulled through here in the next week or so.
Make sure Bernie puts it on.
I'm sorry, end of November,
Well,
but it definitely will happen in October. So,
But you gotta transfer that equity onto what you're purchasing then? Okay.
portion of it.
And what do you
Oh,
do?
right, yeah, but.
We're purchasing 2 used vehicles from Creative Bus Sales, formerly National Bus Sales. They really stripped down the pricing on us for it. We're spending about $85,000 for an 2017 Ford Starcraft, very similar to what we have out there already, only longer.
16 or 18,000.
One of them is a 22 passenger and the other one is a 16 passenger.
Wow.
So they both require CDLs to operate. We will spend some money on the smaller one. It doesn't have a destination sign, so we're gonna put
Is the other one a
destination sign on.
2012, is we still looking at?
The other one's like a 2012,
Okay,
What
so
kind
it's the
of
same
mileage?
two we
same
talked
two that we
about.
talked about.
All right.
What kind of mileage?
The 17 only has less than 10,000 miles on it,
Wow.
and the 12 has like 80,000, so it's pretty light mileage.
Yeah.
Is that like a Ford 450?
Same
I saw them in
chassis.
Charlotte when I was up there when they evacuated.
Check the tires.
Yeah. So I'm sending Tom up there next week to go inspect them. I'm trying to get the full actual value of what these vehicles were when they were new from Creative. That's been a little like pulling teeth, but they should get that to me here today or tomorrow. I'll be sending in the request to FTA formally. And they actually went back to the FMO reviewers to get me a letter that basically says you can do this, and I don't know that anybody's ever done it before.
Are they
So,
coming with tires?
yeah, they'll have tires on them.
Really? Yeah,
Oh.
because usually we have to.
How in the
They
world,
keep the
that is
tires.
just such a bizarre arrangement, did you get them to agree to that? I mean, I can see going, I don't know, I want to.
Well,
I'm good with it.
I
I'm good with it.
get a little bit of sympathy from the folks in the regional office. They know what we're up against.
Good whiner.
And yes, I'm the squeaky wheel, and I'll take it, man.
Well, they might be happy to get it off their books.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they know, we
Wow.
can't afford, $200,000 worth of stuff. so-
After all that belly, I don't know, I'm just surprised. It's a good thing. I mean, it's-
Brian is doing this, showing us how he did it.
Yes, I just sit
Misery
there and
and
rub my
sweating
hand and,
Yeah,
come on,
yeah,
come on, Rhonda.
Woe is me.
So, anyway,
Great acting job.
one thing I forgot to mention on the AECom thing
Realize
is
you
that
can-
you do have a resolution before you, another suspension of procurement. Here's the deal, we've got a DVE vendor that's gonna spend $11,200 or $11,800
Something over 10.
on sign, that's just a little bit over $10,000. It's way under the $100,000 threshold for FTA, and I just don't wanna go out for a full bore RFP for $1,800.
Let's ask the obvious question, is 12 enough to handle your needs in the future, or do you have to go to 15? I don't want you to do this and then come back again.
We have 410 locations. I'm buying 500 signs. So I should have plenty for all existing locations plus some spares.
Well, you may want to go ahead and include another round of these decals just in case something happens. You know what I mean, like if they don't go on just right or any of that kind of stuff, to have that spare set of decals for each of the numbers. So
Oh, for the numbers?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they're giving it to us in individual numbers, right? So yeah, we should have
Well,
plenty of,
printed individually, like 120.
I don't think so. I think it's actually the individual numbers. You
It's
sure about that?
500 decals, 3.5 by 6.
Okay, so we can throw in some extra spares on that.
So 500 decals is, you have, some numbers are double digits, right? Well,
Triple digits.
Well, it's just, according to Michelle, it's just one sticker.
Yeah.
So we'll have a 123 sticker, we might need a spare 123. I mean, it sounds like there's too much of an issue getting those reprinted if we need to, but.
No, I just didn't know
Are
if
we
you
going
needed
to
to
raise-
have that.
It's not, I don't think that's a big deal.
Are we gonna raise the 10,000 to 15,000 to cover this
well, that's
in the
what I was
future,
suggesting, rather than
doing-
going to 12.
No. All I'm asking you to do is suspend our procurement manual for this one procurement. And I can go up to 100,000 under FTA rules. We're using an FTA grant
Yeah.
to fund this. The state is not involved. Our procurement manual is based on the state
Right.
thresholds.
And the
Right,
lower
right,
limit
right.
is just our own
Right.
That's our round.
So when the triennial review comes and they see that I made a $12,000 expenditure with 3 quotes, instead of doing a full bore review, I just have to have a piece of paper in there that said, my board let me suspend my procurement rules for
Well, what I'm
this one
saying
procurement.
is that in the future, instead of just doing it for 1,800, maybe we should raise it from 10,000
To 15.
to 15.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what
not a
I'm
bad
saying.
idea.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying, that would cover.
But there's some wiggle room in there.
we can look into that. I mean, I think we're really, the way that thing's written is to take the harsher version of the rules between the feds and the state.
You might want.
So if the
15,000 there.
state raises it to 15,000 or 25,000, then we would automatically raise it. But until they do, it doesn't make much sense for us to raise ours.
And this is only the first time in a long time, I don't ever remember it. doing this.
Well,
We
because
did
they
it
in
last
our-
meeting
We did,
for the Myrtle Beach Transit Center, but that was
Oh,
a
yeah.
whole different set of issues and
Well, if you're comfortable with it, we'll go with what you got there. It's already typed out.
that's all I need.
All right,
I'm
I'm
good to
gonna
go.
go that we,
All right?
All right,
So, I think,
we want to do that when we get to the resolution?
yes, please. So then the only other thing I have is the project listing. Did I just distribute that?
did we
So,
ever take care of the time clock? The time clock,
we did that with
Yeah.
Strobus.
we did, oh,
the whole
okay,
service.
right.
I don't know what we did with the old one, but it's
Well, we were
probably
supposed-
collecting dust.
we were
somewhere.
supposed
It's in
to sell
Kevin's
it.
office collecting dust.
Yes,
It's a $100 item, so.
Oh, we're not gonna get any.
No.
Well,
You don't need
you
it in
said
your
this
house.
is your last item, but what about your goals?
Well, I'm not sure when we were going to be discussing those. If you want to discuss those now, we can.
Let's do it in part of your manager's report.
Okay. Well, so just on projects, I won't go through each and every one of these. If it is highlighted in green, it's essentially a new project, even though some of them look old. We've kind of made some changes related to them. If it's highlighted in the gray shading, then it's something that has changed. We've talked about a lot of these. I guess number 9 on the list, we're a little bit behind on that because of the hurricane, so we're hopefully going to get that squared away in October on staff reorganization evaluations. And we'll do whatever we're going to do retroactive to October 1st. Still haven't had any movement on stop enunciation. We've got a lot of work to do on that side of the house, but we're gonna get the vendor here and just talk about
Which
what our
number
options
are you talking
Number
about?
13.
Some of us are colorblind, so sorry would be on this.
Can you not distinguish between those?
No.
Browns and
Are there any colors that I could use that you could distinguish?
Black and white.
Black and white, red and yellow, I can sometimes figure out, but
So if I had gray and yellow, that would work?
no.
No.
Don't worry, just tell me the number.
All right.
Number 10, back a little bit, I stopped by there last week, I knew the floors were bad, needed to be fixed, I was afraid they were so bad, we were gonna have a safety. They're bad, they need to be replaced, but
Yeah.
there's enough people in there, they're not,
The
I'm
safety
worried.
issue is somebody tripping.
Yeah, that's what I was,
or,
it
you know,
On
those
one of
types of
those.
yeah, that's what I was worried
Are they
about.
uneven?
When you first,
It is,
it's
it's not
when you
as,
first enter
Yeah.
that they
Creepy.
are.
it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be, so I'm not, I was prepared to, God, maybe shut the doors, it's not that bad.
We have a new quote from the provider, we just got to schedule them, so,
Okay.
you know, it's gonna happen this month, I think, we'll get in there. So we're gonna have to shut it down for a couple of weeks, go from there.
And the water heater and all,
And we're gonna replace the water heater as
with
well.
one of those
Yep.
small ones, right? Tankless.
Just trying to go through here and
Stop
look at stuff.
enunciation.
We probably need to talk about, get you an update on what we're doing with the Rider's Guide at the,
Yeah, the new rider
Service
guide,
committee.
18.
yeah, well, we haven't made too many inroads on that, aside from the signage that we put up, but, Michelle and I haven't talked about where we're going on that, but we'll bring you guys an update on what's happening with that, at the service committee
Because
meeting.
you've just been reprinting our other one in English and Spanish.
Right, so service committee, we have an entertainment shuttle strategy, including the survey. We have, rider's guide. And we
noticed that you're doing safety training on the Coke machine and, back there, so that's scheduled for November.
That's defensive driving for everybody.
Things you learn by going into people's back
And what
rooms.
was,
You should even know what I figured out in your house, going in the back rooms.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And Mr. Wilson's too.
Yeah, right.
So just a couple things here on the second page. We talked about Eco Lane there on line 26. Line 32, this kind of cropped up on me a little bit. We have to have a transit asset management plan, which sounds a lot worse than it is in terms of level of effort by the end of the month. And I've gotten started on it, but it's basically a program that FTA requires to kind of illustrate your needs.
Does it look at the age and valuation of each
Well,
of the
yeah, it
assets?
allows you to put some local flavor into those thresholds and things like that. Like we typically run a bus until they're 15, 16 years old. The FTA guideline is 12, moving to 14. So yeah, I mean, you look at age and condition and how much money you put into rehab and things like that. So it organizes your thoughts. It'll be a useful tool once you get developed.
You had a spreadsheet at one point that had each of the vehicles. Can you use that as your starting point?
Yeah, they actually gave you a nice little spreadsheet primer on how they want it developed. And it doesn't just look at vehicles, it looks at all your assets. So, I taking the inventory listing, and we're getting ready to do an update on that here with the end of the year, so,
It's too bad you don't have interns, because that would be a wonderful project to turn over to somebody. I mean, a learning experience.
and it's, the COG is involved. It has to have a public enrollment process, so we have to do it in coordination with them. So,
That'll come up at the GSATS meeting?
possibly. No, line 29, I think I want to go after GSATs for doing our fare structure analysis. We might have to provide local match, but I'd like for them to find some funding to put that out on the street and let them coordinate
Is
it.
that fare structure for the entertainment shuttle or for the route?
For the
as a
whole system. I talked about that a little bit last night with council, is that our system's a little bit antiquated, and while we don't have provisions in a budget to make any changes on it in FY19, we need to at least know what we're gonna do moving forward. So I think that's bringing in a consultant to
Not
eyeball
only
it.
getting them to help pay for it, assuming the conclusion of that recommends an increase in fare, we have blame apportionment when that rolls out with fare increases. They bought into the process that we have to raise fares.
Who's that?
GSATs in the council government. I mean, you're getting your money up front, but if
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we don't want to get too far out in front of the wagon on this, but, I think there's lots of things we can do with the fares, short of an increase in base fare to improve our revenue. But then we have all of the technology questions to answer, and what will our folks that use our system use, those types of questions that, there's a lot of work that would go into that study to answer the question. So we'll develop a scope, but I'm gonna say, look, you guys get 5307 and transit planning money. You need to set aside some money for us to do this. So,
I think you have a related project, fare box repair. I mean, if we're losing as much money as we think we are on fare box,
is that
I don't see that as a project.
Farebox repair is ongoing. We're putting a lot of money into fare boxes and doing the best we can on that, but we're getting to the point where we're not getting bang for our buck. We're spending $1,800 on a trim.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if you should make this be a defined project, given its potential impact on your bottom line.
What the actual refurbishment of fare boxes?
However, way you're gonna handle it.
All right, that's kind of rolled into our maintenance program.
Okay.
I don't know that it needs to be a project on this list necessarily, but we do, I'll bring you information on sort of how we're doing on that. I have the data on failures, you know, that's been sent to me, I just haven't looked at it yet.
I think
I
this
will
board would
look-
like a report on that.
Right, and I would like to be able to determine the experience for refurbished fare boxes versus unrefurbished fare boxes. So that's gonna take a little bit of
And
time.
that's gonna add it to your
Have
list
we-
of to-do things.
With the money that we're using to refurbish this, would it be beneficial just to start purchasing new ones?
Well, I assume we do purchase new ones with new buses.
But that's kind of a technology question.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
Yeah, we
purchase
don't
this
really
type
want-
of technology.
Yeah.
Again,
It's
we're not, it's not
I
useful.
just, a simple observation of this though, and I don't know, I haven't heard it discussed, is, it just kind of popped in my head, the pass revenue compared to cash monies, a good month is 10%. It seems like that the passes would be more durable and less likely to have a failure in some sort of,
It's both.
but you would have a two-step process where people would have to purchase the passes, and we talked about the
Right.
cost of the machines. But to me, that would help with this fare box failure and this cash handling business. If we get up the percentage of pass sales or people boarding with passes as opposed to cash,
And
that,
to answer that, in part, you're gonna have to determine what percentage of your riders are repeat riders, or what you would call regular riders.
Right.
Because they're gonna be the ones that are gonna be
Purchase
most
the
likely
passes.
to do the
This is
passes.
why this is a very extensive scoped project. I mean, those are all legitimate questions to answer. I'm not too excited about our folks that use the service wanting to get away from cash. And then some of them are scraping to get together 6 quarters anyway.
Big pennies in.
But if
So-
you get someone that's sitting on the side of the road and they see a bus coming, they get on and they don't have a pass, what do they do?
Right.
Right. But using the technology we have today that is very mechanical, and it's old technology, is not the way to go. So we're gonna fight our existing fare boxes for as long as we can while we're trying to make some of these decisions on what the new fare box is.
Well, I'm trying to
And
figure out
what
how,
would it be? You mean just cash
There's
it
all
in?
sorts of options.
Oh,
There's all sorts of options.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how mission critical this is. If it's mission critical, it doesn't need an immediate resolution, but it needs a designation as something that we know to come back to. And it's a lumpy enough item that lumping it in with maintenance might not be the way to go.
Well, I mean, that's why I put this project here on line 29, is to start analyzing it from soup to nuts.
Well, you could have solved all this if you said that is included in the fare structure analysis.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I
It said
did.
fare box recovery is
No.
included as a subset.
No, yeah, man, what technology we use for our fares
Yeah.
moving forward is gonna be answered by this study.
Okay, then
I got you.
So I don't have any wherewithal to do the study right now. And so I'm gonna try to hit up some resources on that, and see what we can find. That, you know, if GSATs can't help me, then I'll go to the state. and see what we can do.
Okay, all right, now I get
I
it.
understand.
But this is a
Yeah.
full-blown analysis based, you know, what does our structure look like? What kind of changes do we need to make? What kind of deep discounts should we offer, continue to offer, change? All that stuff, what technology to use, how do we reduce cash? All of those,
and
all
also
of those
denominations,
questions.
we got, I mean, I'm just looking at
How do we
simple, there's
simplify?
way too many denominations in terms of pass options and things like that, and we need to scale that back so it becomes, you know.
And then,
And what about you
This
got
is-
foreign people coming here that don't have
Yeah, I mean, we
American
they're
money?
gonna
got
use,
We
they're
have-
gonna use
options of
American
fares,
money.
it
We
makes no
have
sense.
a new bank that opened up in North Myrtle Beach right next to, on Main Street, and it's a French name, so it must be a Canadian bank.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it's a huge bank.
It's amazing to me how many banks are.
I haven't been inside a bank in 20 years.
No, that's dangerous. I always do a drive-through. I never go in, only
Is it
if I have to
possible
go to
that,
my box.
We could
It is.
vote on the resolution.
They rob on bicycles.
I think we're about at the end of the report.
I don't think we're last year they run down here and
Okay, wait a minute, can we just do one person?
Are we at the end of your report?
Well, unless you wanna do goals and accomplishments.
Joe wants to vote on this because he has to go.
Let's include that under new business.
Okay.
or actually old business.
There's one other quick item is we're looking at, it's all his fault. Since we went to the payroll technology, we're looking at a purchase order workflow system. And we just started researching now. Sage, the software we use, offers one. So we've been kind of loosely researching this, but we haven't quite determined the fee structure, but it's kind of a cloud-based thing. It's like $500 or $600 a month, which is a little pricey in my mind, but we're still in the rubber stamping POs and invoice and circulating them around, and it's causing a lot of hiccups. And what we need would be a scanner, and we'd have to pay some sort of monthly fee in order to get this all an electronic-based workflow purchase order system. So that is in its infancy right now, but we are already starting to research that, which is again a quantum leap forward in technology and a lot of headaches.
It
But
took you long enough to do the payroll.
that's why I said it's bring it up.
So,
We actually started this 3 years ago. I'm just bringing it up now.
I know. Let's end manager's report and go to approval of resolutions. Joe just stepped out, but I think it's just to make a call. Are you through?
Yes, sir.
Manager's report?
Yes, sir.
All right, moving on to approval of resolutions.
May as well be.
We have one motion. We've got to wait for Ivory to be back so he can see that I read the entire motion.
I'm wondering where we were on the intermodal center.
I know, and then I got to do all that.
And then we're gonna go back to that.
All right.
Moving the center, moving this office over to Myrtle Beach.
As he's chewing, last night he mentioned we need to do that, but he,
Yeah,
right,
I
one of
wondered
the
if
high maintenance facility is how you told the county last night.
Right, and that's moving to the top of the list for me, so we've got, the money is available to us until next September, but we gotta get
You
rolling.
said $1 million.
$1 million.
Okay, yeah, all right.
All right, Lynette, let's go ahead and read the approval of resolution September 2018-15.
Waukesha Regional Transportation Authority, resolution number September 2018-15, approval to override internal purchasing cost thresholds for procurement of bus stop signs.
All right, do I have a motion to accept this resolution?
So
Which is
moved.
the approval to override the internal purchasing cost thresholds. So moved, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? I think we did discuss it in the manager's report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. All right, motion passes. We have no, sorry, we do have, now we're into old business. We've been talking about manager's report long enough and often enough that I'll call it old business. Daryl? Brian, you're back.
Well, I mean, this is, I think, was sort of
I don't think any of us expected you to have this done today because of the hurricane.
precipitated by my review. So I sent this out to you guys, and I think really what we ought to use this time, if you all will indulge me, is I can go through them briefly if you'd like, or just kind of fill you in on any questions you might have about what some of these mean, those types of things, and then you would use it in your review of, in my evaluation.
Let's go with item number 2 because all of us are good adults who can read.
Right.
Let's take a look at the accomplishments and see if anybody has any question about the meaning or intent of what we see there.
Item number 2 is what? The accomplishments?
Did you mean item 2, the accomplishments, or item 2 of, or just going with the second option of me answering questions related to these
I meant-
versus?
Yes, I meant
That's what he meant.
item
So-
2, meaning we don't have Brian.
Okay, read.
Are any of
Each one of
these,
these.
I got you.
are any of these, do they not explain well enough? Are they?
The enunciation program, obviously, we're not quite there yet, even though it's on all the buses. I see that as an accomplishment. that deserves to be there. If you want it to be a continuing item,
Okay.
because it's not yet complete, that's fine, but I would add enunciation in there.
Okay, there you go, Brian.
Thank you, Rob. It's the nicest thing you've said to me all day.
Accomplishment
He's
5.
trying to get you used to when your children grow up and they start hacking at you, he's trying to get you used to that.
Item 5, the biggest issue being lack of inventory. What does that mean?
We don't have
Means
enough
we
buses
could-
to
we
sell.
could-
Not
Like,
having any
if
more
I had
buses.
6 trolleys, I could have sold all 6 trolleys.
Yeah, we had more business than we did have equipment.
Well, that's the problem. We're not gonna buy 6 trolleys, we can't even
Well-
buy 2, so I got you, okay, that's what that
You
is.
know, I'm just saying that's the limiting factor at this point,
Okay.
not,
I got you.
Not
Yeah, there are
anything else.
times that I can't get enough King coasters on because we don't have that availability.
we don't have the space on the buses.
Yeah, and I still see our new buses, the big side panels are still basically vacant, so. The 4 new flyers, there's very little high-priced
sign?
advertising
You
on the
sign?
street side, on the side of the bus, correct?
No, the 4 new flyers have Broadway Grand Prix and the Motorways that have them all summer. It ends this month.
Okay, but is that on the side of the bus?
That's on
There's
each
something else
side
to add, so-
for all 4 new flyers and the
Wow,
2 that we
I
painted.
paid more attention than what I saw yesterday. Didn't have anything on it.
Yeah, just-
Something
Gotcha,
else I have to
okay.
say.
I mean, I can show you.
No,
that.
I can look to,
I mean,
I just looked at the wrong bus.
Yeah.
Is she?
No, that's you.
Brian, I'm gonna sound a little two-faced.
Pete, you just-
No, that's for the Christmas parade.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna sound a little
I
two-faced,
didn't
but I
want
think
to miss anything.
No, you can't sign that.
Okay.
the budget management is itself an accomplishment. Borrowing the Conway National Bank money, we've had a lot of conversation about that, but it's not fully captured in number 1. I think budget management to get us through cash problems is an accomplishment that I would like to acknowledge. I want it paid back, or, you know, but you took a risk
We
doing
didn't
that.
miss the payroll or had to close the door.
Right, you took a risk doing that, you kept the
And that was
agency
on Ron's
going.
list. I have to admit, that was on Ron's list.
Well, I would add that, because I can't very well harp at wanting it to be paid off without acknowledging the importance of it in the first place.
And we did it without a finding.
Yes.
So that's sort of part of 6 here, but to me, that was a huge accomplishment. And it was Ron and his staff and basically everybody here that made that happen, so.
Well, an item on budget management, including
Okay.
new revenue, new federal grant monies coming in, new capital available,
Yep.
debt management, all that is a big part of what we expect you to do.
Yep. I'll add it.
And I did look back through minutes, and this is the first time ever in the history of Coast RTA that we had an audit with 0 findings.
Was it excellent? What's consistent onboarding mean?
No one has gone to jail.
Consistent onboarding, we don't,
I just want 1 day lead time.
I don't think we've ever had 2 employees that heard the exact same thing coming into our office.
Oh, onboarding of people.
Onboarding of people.
Okay.
Um,
I'm sorry, I'm thinking
We
onboarding
need to
buses.
formalize that process, make sure everybody's getting the same story.
Which story now? I didn't hear that.
We're just, he's looking at number 3.
Yeah.
We've got so much work to do on our training program, it hurts to think about it, but, yes, just giving people who come in to the office to work, new employees, the same story, having the same, very consistent information. And I think it is okay, but it's not, it just could stand for a lot of improvement.
What you're saying is you need a special person to do that.
Well, that's one of the duties of that
That
new
safety
position. And they're not necessarily providing the training, they're coordinating it and making sure it happens and make sure that everybody is going through that same process.
It's important.
So yeah, we have a number of drivers who don't know every route. I mean, and that, we've had complaints about not getting hours, but, sometimes I got a route that you could drive if you knew the route. And so that's partially on the employee, but it's also on us in terms of training them so that they know every route. And we have that flexibility.
Are they taken on a trip to all these different routes when they're hired?
No. Not
Probably should
yet,
be.
but they
should be.
probably should be.
I would add a goal, implementing the bus stop designation program, and I think you can put a percentage on there. If you know you've got 500 signs over this next year, FY19, it's your goal to get 200 of them out there? Or is there another way to,
Based on how much, let me look at the grant.
right, another way to
They gotta
visualize
take
how,
that long.
I don't want you to assume that it's all gonna get done this year, because we know it's not.
Well, we have basically $300,000, so whatever that's gonna give, and I think it's about half of the signs.
I would add that in as your
Okay.
goal.
Getting back to that question before.
I'm sorry.
There are board members who don't know all the routes. I don't know all the routes because I haven't ridden all the routes. You know because you've ridden them. But a lot of the board members should have the opportunity sometime to take one of these routes, you know what they are. I mean, you can see it on paper, but if you're on the bus, it's a
Yeah,
lot
it's all
different.
about.
Board members should have.
And I will acknowledge being remiss myself.
I want one.
A what?
We should have CDLs. How about number 7? Why do
You
say
don't have to
moderate
take,
access?
you don't have to take an eye test anymore, because
Yeah, right.
my husband got a driver's license till he's 99. They gave him 8 years
Is that right?
and didn't give any of us a eye test, and I took an eye test over the years. I had to take one.
So
And
you-
at
you
my
grew up
age and my
calling it
husband,
moderate
91,
success?
did not have to take an eye test.
The eye test also,
Can you believe that? And I've taken,
Yeah, can we get back on point here? I'm sorry. You had a question?
I wonder why you call that a moderate success and number 7 under accomplishment. It seems to me it's a big success.
Well, I said that because I don't think as many people use it as I
That's
thought
true, yeah.
they would use
It
it.
works well.
It's getting better.
It works successfully, but
And-
it's not really used.
You know,
They
We
don't
also-
use it, they don't have the technology in some cases, but I don't think that's your problem.
I think a lot of the technology.
I think, the people who are using it like it, and it's doing well for them, and so,
And once we get the
4-year-olds
signs up,
have
and they have to
technology,
wait for how much
believe
time
me.
before
it's the
the next stop.
50-year-olds that don't.
That's what I think we need
People
to
have
start using it.
Yep.
I really do.
the visibility that it'll give us
I
is
get
gonna
on
be,
lots of times,
gonna
I
be
get
awesome.
confused.
Hopefully have enough equipment out there to handle the mad rushes of people who are gonna start using our service.
Yeah.
So,
Flooding it.
that's a good problem to
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
We had, over the hurricane break here, when we're running limited service, we had an issue with one of the new buses, had a mirror that was broken. And we got everybody, it was on Route 7, we had everybody loaded up, and there was 3 bikes on the bike rack. And so we needed to take it out of service. And so the only buses we had available to us were 2 bike racks. And so I told the driver, let that person carry that bike onto the bus.
Carry it right on the bus.
But, it's
That's fair.
the bike rack usage is off the charts. It's really, really good. So we probably need to replace all our racks with 3 bike racks.
I think you need to add a
Well,
goal
the front, one, the
6.
back.
I think you need to add a goal, which is, we've been talking enough and long enough to initiate a new facility transition plan. You need to spend that $1 million.
Yeah.
And,
That's number 1. Start due
Oh, I'm
diligence
sorry,
for
correct.
replacement
It's right
maintenance
there.
facility. That is the
That's
top
why
goal.
19 goal.
right.
Number 1 goal.
Does anybody else on the board have additional goals as you think about what needs to be done over the next year from the GM? One
Did
thing
we
you have
get
to
the front of
do.
this building straightened out?
Pardon?
No.
To answer your question, I have one,
Re-
our plan for trolley replacements. It's gonna happen, we're gonna need new trolleys. But how do we go about doing that? Is it gonna be a trolley, is it gonna be a cutaway, what type? They're wearing out,
Yeah.
speaking the obvious.
I think we have lots of goals that might not necessarily make it to this page,
Yeah.
but that's still a
Might
goal.
be one.
You're right.
The
If you think
small
that's
buses-
important enough, then we
The
can
small
certainly put
buses
it on
are
here.
fine.
I know it's important, but it's something, you're right, that has to happen, and it's,
I don't
The
think it's,
trolleys stand out more along the Ocean Boulevard.
Yeah.
I think what is your overall
They
plan,
stand
yeah.
out, they stand
Well,
out
that has to do
anyway.
with money.
Everyone looks at it and
Yeah,
they're,
well,
you
then
know,
North
better
North
than
needs to
looking
buy
at
it. What did
us.
Joe-
But
If you don't
that
have
has
it,
to
you
do
don't
with
have
money.
it, that's all.
Is it available to buy
I
it?
don't have that
Well,
available.
that's why I like to have the plan. Myrtle Beach may buy us one, and we're not canceling the entertainment shuttle, but Woods will probably stop running. I mean,
North Myrtle
it's a
Beach.
study into itself, it's not easy, it's not a 5-minute thing.
How about if we kind of broaden that a little bit, and we just talk about having a good entertainment shuttle strategy moving
Okay,
forward?
I handle
And that
that.
includes the equipment.
Well, it include whether it's church fair or not, and all that, that's a
Right.
better, broader goal than what I do.
Yeah. Put that on.
Right.
Another hard goal that you, yeah, I say it's hard, not because it's rigid, but it's gonna be difficult, is you're gonna have to restructure your staff consistent with your budget. And you may as well put that down there. I'm not sure how exactly the right wording to use, because this becomes a public document, but your budget calls for a restructuring, and you may as well put something in there to that effect.
Think about it. I mean, I think,
Well, you're gonna have to do it for the budget anyways, whether you
yeah,
wanna
I
make
mean, I
it a goal or
think
not.
that's just, you know, we have an agreement on what the budget is, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, not just
Do you
employee
know,
employment
18 years
restructure.
ago, Marilyn Hackley said to me that we can get money. She said, we can go into a program and get money. How come that's never been mentioned
Money for what?
for transit?
I don't, do you know what money she's talking about? I mean,
No,
I
that
don't,
was 18 years ago.
right.
Things have changed since then.
Well, the amount of money coming to the region then was higher than it is now per capita.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it might have been less because there's fewer people here.
Right.
So that, you know, there's,
Well,
hard nut to
we
crack.
never went into it. It wasn't for me to go into it, but at the time, I guess it was Shula, you know, and he never went into it.
there is, if you count the federal dollars and the local dollars now, there's approximately $160,000 coming into this agency by virtue of the population in North Myrtle Beach. That is almost one route for a year.
Right.
So we just, I mean, it's there, you know, as soon as we right the ship and we get our finances straight, and that's one of the first conversations
I
we
hope
gotta
it's in
have.
my
That
lifetime.
could-
I really
I'm working
do.
on it, Kitty.
I know
I'm
you
working
are.
on it.
I know you
It
are.
could have been
I
a
just hope
different
I didn't
friend.
say it.
One other goal I think we should keep in mind, I won't put go on this list, is to get to APTA next year. I think that would be a valuable place for you to just live, you know, put some resources.
Yeah, that was, this year's I went last year. I was in Atlanta, I was in Nashville this year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, the gyms.
Last week.
In case she looks at it and say she looks
Okay.
at it.
I mean, I think it's just a way to keep up.
I'm sorry, Bertie, what was the other goal?
I think it'd be more,
I don't,
That Brian should,
I don't even care.
plan to go to APTA next year, the national conference.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put that as a goal.
No, I wouldn't put it on this list, but I think it's something to keep in mind.
Do we have your stated goals from last year for this year embedded within these accomplishments, or do we have to crosswalk what we did last year?
give me some time to do that. Look for them.
Remember,
I
we
couldn't
did
find
it
it.
last
I
year.
was thinking that,
You have them? So I'll do that cross-referencing for you.
okay.
Because I would imagine there's a couple in there we didn't do. So we'll get those
Well,
in there.
it was probably the bus stops.
Well, that was one of them, you know.
Right.
Getting the fleet turned over was one of them, I can tell you that. So we're doing pretty good on that. We're doing pretty good on
I
that.
think we're doing pretty well. I mean, you know,
Well, I'm just trying to envision Ivory putting together a form, or us putting together a form that the board can then use to do the evaluation part of the process.
before the end of the year.
Well, before the end of the month, before the end of October.
So I'll get a rework of this out to you guys by the end of the week,
All right.
by Friday.
Oh, good. Any other old business? Do we have any new business?
Wait a minute, we got this thing that's empty. These meetings.
Yeah, the
I don't know
meeting
what the
dates.
dates are.
Schedule.
I don't know what the dates are on these. And why isn't there no service pack meeting in October?
Well, because we were
October
originally
this
thinking
year.
that we were gonna have one in September.
Oh, okay.
So now we need one in October.
All right.
And there's a calendar separate from this for you to look at too. Start with October.
Well, we're gonna do what, the third?
We loaded you up with
Second.
paper this time.
I loaded them up with it last time, but we didn't do this last time.
The tenth, I
Third
think
or
I
second, what?
already had something on the tenth.
Well, one thing we need to, I mean, let's kind of think about this systematically. I mean, the board meeting dates probably don't need to change. That last Wednesday of the month seems to work, right?
Yes.
We do a combined one for November, December, and early December, correct?
Mhm.
So is that the 5th?
That won't
Last
be
year
the
it
case
was
if you're doing DOT's training till this year.
DOT's,
Halloween,
Columbia on the
October
4th.
31st is Halloween.
yeah, the review, the SCDOT review shouldn't impact the board meeting.
Right?
We just send them to the back room.
Yeah.
if we had to.
October 31st is the board meeting.
Yes.
All right. What are we gonna do about the?
We can come dressed up as board members.
Right, right. That would be interesting.
Yes, Smith, bless him.
That's scary.
What are we doing about the service
Chilling.
pack in
Right,
October?
Italian, yeah.
What is that, the second, the third?
Do the service
17th?
packet finance on the same
In
day.
October.
Yeah, let's do it that way.
To the 3rd of what?
The 17th,
Of what?
Oh, the 3rd Wednesday.
third Wednesday,
Where's
do them
Ron?
both together.
I was gonna ask Ron about the
You
closing
want to do it on the 24th?
on the 24th instead of the 17th, to give them time for the closing.
Well, that's good.
That might make some sense because we are doing year end.
All
Yeah.
right,
So
24th?
the 24th, if that's
For
okay with
each
everyone.
other,
both
for
committees.
each
What's
other.
the 24th of what?
24th of October
October.
for service pack and finance.
I'm gonna write these down and I'll put them in and send you a
Okay.
completed calendar.
What about November now?
I don't think we have anything in November.
I may
You
have a
got
conflict
Thanksgiving
on
on the
November
22nd.
24th, but I don't need to be here. So I think
No,
I've
it's
got,
October.
I'm sorry, October. I think I've got a medical appointment down in
21st, some
Charleston.
people will be out of
Rowan.
town, it's Thanksgiving,
We don't usually do
21st.
anything in
So
November.
it's a none for service?
No.
But you can do November, December,
Right,
Yeah,
or
so,
early December.
So that's-
which this year, last year it was the 6th, this year it's the 5th
5th of
for the
December?
board
for the
meeting.
board meeting.
12/5 for the November, December meeting.
Yeah.
Find out.
All right, what about the, there's non-service and no finance?
Okay, hang on a second, let's think about this for a second.
Yeah.
I,
Might be too long, finance.
well, I'm thinking if we do the board meeting on the 5th, we might still need a finance committee meeting in December after we
Why
close
don't we
November.
do- Why don't we do the three of them together on the 5th?
What, October, November,
That'd
and
be too
December?
early for
No,
the.
no,
Because we're doing
the
it.
finance, the service,
Okay.
Finance one.
and
we can do
the
that.
board, the
Yeah.
three of them together at the same day.
If we're gonna do that, let's do it on the 12th.
Okay?
12th
Well,
of December?
Yes,
The next,
all right,
No.
we'll do the three of them, right?
we can do all three of them that day. and we'll-
Yeah, that's good,
On
and
the
then
5th?
we'll have a
Well-
little Christmas celebration.
Yeah.
We'll have lunch.
I will miss the one on the 24th due to medical stuff with one of my kids, but
24th on what?
of October.
No.
But others can carry on with that.
So then,
For that,
That's the committee meeting.
yes.
So we're gonna do the committee and PAC and board meeting on December 5th.
12.
12.
Okay,
And the November, and the October board meeting is the 31st.
You'll have to do
Right.
the results of the survey. That's okay.
Well, the 24th, yeah, so we can talk.
now are we gonna do finance at 8:15 and service PAC at 9:30? And
Yeah.
then board meeting at what time?
10:30.
10:30.
Okay.
And then January, we get back to normal.
Yeah, whatever that is.
16th and the 30th.
There again, because of closing, maybe it would be better to do it the 23rd.
The last Wednesday
Our,
will be the
our
30th.
audit happens the week of the 7th, so I think that would make sense. So if we do January 23rd for committee meetings and 30th for board meetings.
All right, the rest you can fill in yourself.
January 30th, is that, for the board meeting?
For the board meeting, yes, sir.
Okay.
And then February would be the 20th for the committees.
You're gonna write something, send it to us.
Yes.
And what is
The 27th is the board meeting.
Same for March. And we'll postpone, or we'll cancel committees that, if we don't have
the 20th
anything to discuss.
Okay.
All right, well,
That's good.
we're
And
gonna
then you
copy
can
of
do the-
it.
And then
So
you
what
can
did-
do the rest.
What did we do this year for the meeting that we skipped in the summer? Was that in July or was it in August?
August, usually.
We
No,
were
we
going
skipped
to
July
skip
because
August, but
you were
we
going away in
skipped
July.
August instead, July instead.
You're going on your trip to Colorado.
Oh, that's right, I went on my road trip.
How was
Um,
it?
Did that work okay for everybody?
You didn't want to find me.
I guess we could kind of play it by ear, but why don't we?
This is a good time to not meet.
Let's look at April.
April, Easter is the 21st.
Yep.
I'm not doing April.
Ron, for closeout, is the
17th.
17th, would the 17th be too soon for the finance committee? Okay,
17th
17th.
and the 24th?
We pushed it in October because we're doing a closeout for the
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And we pushed it a week in January because of the audit.
Yes, that's right.
May would be the 22nd and the 29th.
Yes,
I thought it
he
was-
did. 22nd.
What was the,
29th.
what was the March board meeting?
The
27th.
27th.
And June
April.
would be,
So-
June would be the 19th and the 26th.
Mhm.
July would be
Now, we want to skip the July board meeting or the August board meeting?
I would rather skip August. I don't know about anybody else.
I don't care. I want to do what Kitty wants to do.
That's far enough out, I don't know that.
I think we can just kind of play it by ear. Let's,
All right, all
why
right.
don't we schedule them for both months and then as we get down the road, we'll cancel one of them.
So July would be for the 24th and then the 31st for the board meeting.
And you might want to give us a date for December, get together.
Yes. This will be the 12th. We're going to do everything in one day on
Okay. December?
the 12th. Uh-huh.
Okay.
And we will have lunch that day.
No, those are medically acceptable.
Can I increase my budget a little bit?
Of course. I'll promise
So
to be
then,
safe.
so just so everybody's on the same page, the months, with our funding agreement with the county, the months preceding the beginning of a quarter, right before we get our payments, become important from, approval standpoint on things. I need to have financials ready to go for them.
So you can always change it.
So, but December is a little bit concerning. I don't know that we'll have closed by the 12th.
I think that's too early.
December, we can do it throw together. I mean,
Yeah, it might just be the
we're gonna
income
want to get out
statement.
of the back half of the month anyways, I'm just looking at reality. So let's push it, I can use that as a carrot and stick thing. Get done by the 12th, because I know half the staff is getting gone last week in
Well,
December.
how about the 19th?
No reason.
How
no
about the
reason we can't do
19th?
Well, we were originally looking at the
19th
5th
is
and we
too
pushed
close.
it back, so.
What about the 19th?
19th is too close.
A lot of people will be going
Yeah, a lot
out
of
of
people
town for
take out, so-
Christmas.
We'll keep it at the 12th and just, but, I wanted to make sure that I had November financials approved so we send them to the county and not have any issues with the January payment.
So we have to have the agreement fill out your papers, right? Your,
Okay, so,
Well, I think
well,
we
that
have
will
to,
send those out to
Brian
you.
is looking at, Brian has to do a crosswalk of the accomplishments draft that we have and what the goals were that were stated
oh, we're
last
not gonna
year.
use the one we used last year?
I'll send the new meeting calendar out to you when I get all the dates.
So are we gonna get an
No,
evaluation in the
we're
mail?
not
That's
gonna
the
use last year
question.
for reevaluation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we used, yeah, that was good.
Okay, do we have anything else, any other business of matter? Any announcements? I have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Please walk out of the room. All those opposed, remain seated.